My family broke into my secret cabin and burned it down. I called the cops, sued them for every penny and let foreclosure destroy them. I'm 32, single, and a long-haul trucker specializing in heavy machinery and hazmat loads. In my family's eyes, I'm the uneducated grunt, the backup plan, the blue-collar disappointment who drives a truck instead of sitting in a corner office. My older sister, Olivia, is the golden child. My parents entirely funded her MBA at Northwestern, covering tuition, rent, and living expenses, to the tune of $140,000. My younger sister, Chloe, is the baby of the family. When she got married, my parents dropped $50,000 on her destination wedding and casually handed her a $30,000 check for the down payment on her starter home. If you do the math, that's $220,000 dropped on my sisters without a second thought. Me? For my 30th birthday, I got a $40 Chili's gift card and a text from my dad that said, "Keep on trucking, kiddo." I never complained. I just vanished into my work. I lived like a ghost on the highway, pulling 80-hour weeks, taking the brutal winter routes through the Rockies that nobody else wanted because they paid triple. I slept in the sleeper cab, ate microwave rice and truck stop sandwiches, and wore the same 4 pairs of Carhartt pants until the knees completely blew out. Every single paycheck, I took 60% of my earnings and funneled it into an obscure high-yield savings account my family knew absolutely nothing about. To them, I was just the guy with a truck. The free labor. Whenever Olivia needed to move apartments, or Chloe bought a new dining set, my phone would ring. I was never invited to the fancy dinners or the wine-tasting weekends. I was only invited when something heavy needed lifting. I was there the day before Olivia's wedding, sweating through my shirt to set up 200 folding chairs. But I wasn't in the wedding party. I was the help. But I had a plan. Last November, I found it, a 15-acre property nestled deep in the woods outside of Estes Park, Colorado. It had a creek running right through the backyard and a stunning, if neglected, 1980s A-frame cabin with massive floor-to-ceiling windows. The owner was a widow named Martha. Her husband had built the place with his bare hands, and she was selling it because she couldn't maintain it anymore. She was asking $230,000. The place needed serious work. The kitchen was a retro nightmare. The deck was rotting, and the plumbing groaned every time you turned a faucet. But the bones were solid steel and old-growth timber. I offered her $215,000. Cash. She looked at me like I was a scammer until I pulled up my banking app and showed her the $245,000 sitting in liquid funds. She started crying, telling me her late husband was a blue-collar guy too, and she wanted the cabin to go to someone who knew the value of hard work. We closed in 3 weeks. I wired the money from a greasy diner booth in Wyoming at 3 a.m. For the next 8 months, that cabin was my entire world. Between cross-country hauls, I drove straight to Colorado. I slept in a sleeping bag on the dusty floor. I ripped out the rotting deck boards by hand, sanded down the original oak beams, completely repiped the plumbing, and built a massive, wrap-around cedar deck. I kept my mouth entirely shut. The plan was to finish the renovation, invite my parents up for Christmas, and finally prove that their disappointment of a son had built an empire with his own 2 hands. Maybe, just maybe, I'd finally get a, "We're proud of you." That fantasy died a violent death on July 14th. I was hauling a 40-ton load of steel pipes to Denver, about 2 hours away from the cabin, when my phone rang. The caller ID said Mom. She never called me midweek unless someone was in the hospital. I hit accept. "Hello? Marcus." "Oh, thank God, Marcus. We need you right now." Her voice was shrill, bordering on hysterical. It was the exact tone she used when she had screwed up and needed me to fix it. "What's wrong? Are you okay? There was a fire at your cabin. We're all here, and Uncle Dave was setting up the massive grill, and there was a leak in the propane, and the deck caught fire, and the kitchen window shattered, and..." My brain flatlined. The hum of the diesel engine faded out. "What the hell are you doing at my cabin?" Dead silence on the line. Then, her tone shifted to that faux sweet, placating voice. "Your cabin, honey. Olivia found the address in your mail, when I was at your apartment watering your plants last month. We thought it was so sweet that you bought a family vacation home and wanted to surprise us. So, we planned a massive family reunion weekend to break the place in. But there was a little accident." "You broke into my property?" I roared, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned stark white. "We didn't break in, sweetie," Dad called a locksmith. "We've been here since Thursday. But you need to come help us clean this up before the insurance adjuster." I hung up. I pulled my massive rig onto the shoulder of I-25, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I called my dispatcher, a grumpy ex-Marine named Cole. "Cole, drop the load at the Denver yard. I need an emergency leave. My family broke into my house and set it on fire." Cole was silent for exactly 3 seconds. Drop the trailer. Take your personal truck. Go. Handle your business. And Marcus? Get a damn lawyer. The 2-hour drive to Estes Park was a blur of blinding rage. I pushed my pickup truck to 85 miles per hour up the winding mountain roads. My mind was doing rapid-fire math, calculating the cost of the cedar wood, the custom windows, the hours of sweat and back-breaking labor I had poured into that place. I kept replaying Mom's voice. Your cabin, honey. Like it was a community center. Like my life, my money, and my property belonged to them by default. I turned onto my private gravel driveway at 6 p.m. The sight made me physically nauseous. There were 9 vehicles parked on my freshly graded gravel. Mom's SUV, Dad's truck, Olivia's BMW, Chloe's minivan, Uncle Dave's massive RV, and a few cars I didn't even recognize. There were at least 25 people swarming my property. Someone had pitched 3 massive camping tents on my manicured front lawn. There was a literal bouncy castle inflated near the tree line. Pop music was blasting from a Bluetooth speaker. And then I saw the cabin. The sprawling cedar deck I had spent 3 weeks building by hand was a charred, blackened crater. The flames had licked up the side of the A-frame, permanently scarring the beautiful wood siding. The massive, custom-paneled kitchen window was completely blown out, jagged shards of glass glittering in the grass. Soot and chemical fire-retardant foam covered everything. I slammed my truck into park and stepped out. The music abruptly cut off. 25 heads turned to look at me like I was the town weirdo crashing their exclusive country club party. Mom came jogging over, her eyes red, holding a half-empty glass of wine. Marcus, honey, we're so sorry. We were going to surprise you, but the accident happened, and we've been trying to clean up. Get the hell off my property, I said. My voice wasn't a yell. It was a low, dangerous growl. She stopped in her tracks, her mouth falling open. What? Everyone, off my property, right now. Dad marched over, puffing his chest out, using his booming head of the household voice. Now listen here, son. Let's talk about this like adults. It was an accident. We'll help pay the deductible. We were just trying to do something nice for the family, and you've been hiding this place from us. You hired a locksmith to drill my locks, Richard. I spat, using his first name. You broke into a house you do not own. Nobody asked permission. You just decided you were entitled to it. I shoved past him and walked into my cabin. The interior was a nightmare. The kitchen I had meticulously restored was trashed. The custom cabinets were scorched and hanging off their hinges. The fire extinguisher foam was baked onto the new granite countertops. My $2,000 refrigerator was unplugged, the doors wide open, all the food inside rotting because they needed the outlet to plug in a margarita machine. I walked into the living room. Wet towels were thrown over my leather sofa. Muddy footprints ruined the $500 Navajo rug I had just bought. I looked down the hall into my master bedroom. Someone's toddlers had been jumping on my bed. There were juice stains on the sheets and dirty diapers piled in my ensuite bathroom. I felt a vein throbbing in my forehead. I walked back outside. The entire family had formed a defensive semicircle on the lawn. Olivia stepped forward, sipping a white claw, looking at me with pure condescension. Marcus, calm down. You're acting unhinged. We're family. What's the big deal? It's just some smoke damage. Insurance will cover it. Honestly, you should be thanking us for breaking the place in. You're being incredibly selfish, ruining our vacation. I am giving you all exactly 10 minutes to pack your garbage and get off my land before I call the sheriff, and have every single one of you arrested for breaking and entering, I said, pulling my phone out. Chloe laughed. A sharp, mocking sound. You're not calling the cops on your own family, Marcus. Stop throwing a tantrum. I didn't say a word. I dialed 911, put it on speaker, and told the dispatcher I had 25 trespassers on my property, who had committed arson and burglary. The color instantly drained from my mother's face. Marcus, what are you doing? Protecting my assets, I replied, hitting end. Clock's ticking. Deputy Miller arrived 20 minutes later. I took that $70,000 and poured it straight back into the cabin. I didn't just repair the damage, I upgraded everything. I hired a professional crew this time. They built a massive, fire-resistant composite deck with steel cable railings. The kitchen was gutted and refitted with commercial-grade stainless steel appliances and custom hickory cabinets. But the most important upgrade was the security. I spent $10,000 installing a state-of-the-art system, 12 high-definition cameras, covering every inch of the 15 acres. Motion sensors, floodlights, and a heavy-duty steel gate at the bottom of the driveway that could only be opened via a code on my phone. Nobody was ever stepping foot on my land again without me knowing. While my cabin was turning into a fortress, my family's perfect facade was crumbling into dust. I heard all the details through my buddy Dave, whose wife is still friends with some of my extended family. To pay the $70,000 settlement, Dad had to liquidate his prized 401k and refinance their house at a brutal 8.5% interest rate. Their savings were completely wiped out. The comfortable, upper-middle-class retirement they had been bragging about for years was gone. Dad had to take a part-time job at a hardware store at age 62 just to make the new mortgage payments. Mom had to drop out of her expensive country club and cancel their 35th anniversary cruise. Olivia's life imploded even harder. Her husband, a high-strung finance bro who despised bad PR and financial liability, was furious that she had dragged his name into a forgery and arson lawsuit. The stress of the settlement, combined with the fact that Olivia had secretly drained their joint savings to pay her portion of the lawyer fees, broke them. He filed for divorce in January. Olivia, at 35 years old, with an MBA and a superiority complex, was forced to move back into her childhood bedroom at my parents' house. Chloe wasn't doing much better. Because my parents were now drowning in debt, they could no longer provide the free, full-time childcare they had promised Chloe for her 2 kids. Chloe and her husband were forced to pay for private daycare, which absolutely shattered their budget. Her husband was livid, blaming Chloe's family for ruining their financial planning. Her TikToks stopped being about healing, and started being passive-aggressive rants about family members who let you down when you need them most. I spent Thanksgiving and Christmas completely alone at my newly restored cabin. I grilled a massive steak, drank top-shelf whiskey, and watched the snow fall over the pines. It was the most peaceful, quiet holiday of my entire life. No backhanded compliments, no being asked to move heavy furniture. Just me, the fire, and the silence. It's been 10 months since the fire. 5 months since the settlement. I thought the war was completely over. I was wrong. It happened last Tuesday. It was late May, and the weather was finally warming up. I had taken a week off work to stain the new composite deck and do some landscaping. I had the steel security gate at the bottom of the driveway propped open because I was expecting a delivery of gravel for the fire pit area. I was on my knees, working a paintbrush along the baseboards, when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. I stood up, wiping sweat from my forehead. A white minivan was creeping up the driveway. I instantly recognized it. Chloe. The security system pinged my phone, but she was already parking next to my truck. She stepped out of the van. She looked terrible. The polished, Instagram mom aesthetic was completely gone. She had dark bags under her eyes, her hair was tied in a messy knot, and she was wearing sweatpants. She was alone, no kids in the back. I set my paintbrush down and walked to the edge of the deck, looking down at her. I didn't say a word. "Marcus," she said, her voice trembling. She looked up at the cabin, her eyes widening at the massive upgrades, the steel railings, the pristine windows, the place. "It looks amazing." "You're trespassing, Chloe," I said, my voice completely flat. "The restraining order doesn't explicitly name you, but you are not welcome here. Get back in your van and leave." She took a step forward, tears instantly welling up in her eyes. "Please, Marcus, just give me 5 minutes. I drove 3 hours to get here. I didn't know where else to go." 4 minutes and 50 seconds, I said, crossing my arms. She broke down sobbing. Real, ugly, desperate tears. "I need help. I am begging you. Mark and I are drowning. The daycare costs are killing us. Mark lost his commission bonus this quarter, and we are 3 months behind on the mortgage. The bank sent a pre-foreclosure notice. If we don't come up with $25,000 by the end of the month, we lose the house." I just stared at her. The sheer audacity was almost impressive. "Mom and Dad can't help us," she choked out, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "They're completely broke because of the lawsuit. Olivia is living with them, and she's a nightmare. Mark is talking about taking the kids and leaving me because the financial stress is destroying our marriage. You're the only one who has money. I know you got the $70,000 settlement. Please, Marcus. It's a loan. I swear to God I'll pay you back. You can't let your niece and nephew go homeless." I let the silence stretch. I let the wind rustle through the pine trees. I looked at my younger sister, the girl who got a $50,000 wedding while I ate truck stop hot dogs, the girl who laughed in my face when I threatened to call the cops while my house was covered in soot. "You want $25,000? I asked quietly. She nodded frantically, a desperate spark of hope lighting up her eyes. "Yes, please. I'll sign a contract. I'll pay interest." "Chloe, do you remember what you said to me when I stood exactly where you are standing right now looking at my ruined house?" She flinched, looking away. "Marcus, I didn't organize the break-in. That was Olivia and Mom. I was just along for the ride. I didn't know they forged a lease." "You didn't organize it," I agreed, my voice hardening into steel. "But you packed your bags. You loaded your kids into your van. You drove up here. You slept in my bed. You drank my beer. You watched my house catch fire, and when I told you to leave, you laughed in my face and told me to stop throwing a tantrum. I was stupid. I was arrogant. I'm sorry, she wailed, falling to her knees on the gravel. You're not sorry you broke in, I said coldly. You're sorry the free ride is over. You're sorry mom and dad's ATM is permanently broken. For 30 years, this family treated me like a pack mule. You all thought you were untouchable, and you thought I was just the dumb trucker who would always take the abuse. I'm your sister, she screamed, her face red and blotchy. I don't have a sister, I replied. I have a blood relative who participated in the destruction of my property. You want $25,000? Sell your designer bags. Sell the minivan. Get a second job. Figure it out like an adult. Just like I had to. She stared up at me, the desperation in her eyes slowly hardening into a toxic, bitter hatred. The mask finally slipped. You are a monster. You are a cold, heartless bastard. You're going to let your own family end up on the street because you can't let go of a grudge. You're going to die alone in this stupid cabin, and nobody is going to care. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and tapped the screen. Deputy Miller is on speed dial. I am starting a countdown from 30. If your van is not moving by the time I hit 0, I am having you arrested for trespassing. 30. Marcus, please. 29. 28. She scrambled to her feet, spitting a string of obscenities at me that would make a sailor blush. She threw open the door of her minivan, slammed herself into the driver's seat, and fired up the engine. 25. I said loudly over the roar of the exhaust. She slammed the van into reverse, kicking up a massive cloud of dust and gravel, and peeled backward down the driveway. I watched her taillights disappear around the bend. I pulled out my phone, opened the security app, and hit the button to close the massive steel gate at the bottom of the hill. The heavy metal doors swung shut with a loud, satisfying clang, locking into place. I stood there for a moment, listening to the absolute silence of the mountain. The air smelled like pine needles and fresh wood stain. I walked back over to my paint tray, picked up my brush, and went back to work. I heard through the grapevine last week that Chloe's house officially went into foreclosure. She and her husband are renting a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in a bad part of town, and they are currently in marriage counseling. Mom and dad are drowning in their new 8.5% mortgage, and dad is working 30 hours a week mixing paint at Home Depot. Olivia is still single, still bitter, and still sleeping in her childhood twin bed. As for me, I just finished building a custom outdoor fire pit. Next week, my buddy Dave and his wife are coming up for a barbecue. I've got premium steaks in the new fridge, top shelf bourbon on the counter, and absolutely zero family drama weighing me down. I built my life from the ground up, I defended it when they tried to take it, and I won. Life is incredibly good.